You know, in the history of tech, we always love to talk about the big game changers, right? The revolutionary ideas, the startups that blow up overnight. But today, we're going to tell a different kind of story. It's about a piece of software that survived against all odds, not because it was the biggest or the fastest, but because it just refused to die.
It's a great question, isn't it? While some tech burns super bright and then flames out, other stuff just becomes part of the furniture of our digital lives. It's just there, working away in the background, kind of forgotten, but absolutely essential. It doesn't need the spotlight, it just gets the job done. And the hero of our story today is the ultimate quiet workhorse, Microsoft Access. Seriously, it was never the cool kid, never the flashiest tool in the box, but for millions and millions of people, it was the first and maybe the only database they ever really truly understood and got to control themselves.
All right, so let's set the scene. The year is 1992. Now, back then, the kings of the desktop database world were names you might have heard of, like DBase and FoxPro. Then Microsoft comes along and does something brilliant. They bundle this new program, Access, into their mega popular Microsoft Office suite. This wasn't just a new product, it was a whole new strategy.
So, what exactly is Access anyway? I mean, to really get why it's stuck around for so long, we've got to understand the very specific niche it carved out. See, it wasn't really a spreadsheet, but it wasn't a big, scary server either. It was something else, something in between.
Okay, so at its heart, Access is what's called a relational database. Now, that term can sound super intimidating, I know. But the key part is the second half of that sentence, with a graphical interface. Access gave you all this power to connect different kinds of information, like, say, your customers and all the orders they've made, without you having to learn how to be a programmer. And this right here just illustrates its role perfectly. On one side, you've got your spreadsheets. They're great, we all use them, fantastic for simple lists. But they really start to fall apart when your data gets complicated. On the other extreme, you have these beastly SQL databases. They literally run the modern internet, but you need some serious technical chops to use them. Access just plopped itself right down in that gap.
This quote, it just says it all. For so many people who knew their data was too messy for a spreadsheet, but who didn't have the budget or the time to go hire a developer, Access was that perfect bridge. It let them walk right over into a much more powerful way of handling their information.
And this, right here, this is the core of the Access story. It's about its incredible impact. Because it was so accessible, it didn't just manage data, it empowered people. It basically democratized the whole idea of a database. This was the truly revolutionary part. All of a sudden, an office manager, a librarian, a small business owner, they could build their own custom application, perfectly tailored to what they needed. They could solve their own problems. That was like a superpower they never had before. Let's make this real for a second. Picture a local hardware store, right? With Access, the owner could build a simple system to track every single nut, bolt, and washer. They'd know exactly when to reorder and see what was selling best. Or, hey, think about a small charity. They could use Access to create a whole database of their donors, keep track of contributions, and even automatically print out thank you letters. I mean, this was professional level stuff on a shoestring budget. And even in schools, a teacher could build this really sophisticated gradebook that connected student info, all their assignments, and their final grades all in one neat little package. And these aren't just hypotheticals. People built these systems, and they were used for decades. This quote is just perfect because it's so true. Access didn't just hand people a tool. It actually taught them a new way to think. It introduced a whole generation of office workers to the concepts of tables and queries and relationships, the fundamental building blocks of pretty much all modern data systems. So let's dive just a little bit deeper and see what made this thing tick. The way Access was designed, technically, is a huge part of why it spread like wildfire. It was built from the ground up to be completely self-contained. So, under the hood, Access ran on this database engine called Jet. But the real magic trick, the secret sauce, was that everything, your data tables, the pretty forms you used for data entry, the queries, the reports you could print, it was all saved together in one single file. This meant you had a fully functional database application in one file with that classic .acdb extension. Now, think about that for a second.
You could build an entire inventory system and then just email it to your colleague. In an age before the cloud was a thing, that kind of portability was an absolute game changer.
And this really gets to the philosophy of the product. No, Access was never going to run Amazon or Google. It wasn't built for massive web-scale traffic, but it was meticulously designed for a person sitting at their desk just trying to solve a very specific real-world problem.
So, how do we sum up its place in history? Well, when you look back at the so-called database wars of the 80s and 90s, Access plays this very special role. It's the quiet survivor. I mean, this slide tells a fascinating story. In the 80s, DBase and FoxPro were the undisputed kings. Then Access shows up in 92, and because it was bundled with Office, it had this insane distribution advantage. By the time the 2000s rolled around, those other powerful rivals had pretty much vanished, bought out, or just discontinued. But Access, it was still there, and it's still here today, quietly powering countless little workflows that just never had a good reason to move somewhere else.
So its legacy isn't really one of dominance. It was never the fastest database. Professional developers, yeah, they kind of looked down on it. But you know what? None of that mattered. It found its niche, it solved real problems for real people, and it simply lasted.
And that is the perfect word for it. We tend to look at older technology and just label it old, but for something to survive for over 3 decades in the crazy, fast-moving world of software, it has to be more than just old. It has to be unbelievably tough. It has to be adaptable. It has to be resilient.
And that's really the thought I want to leave you with. As we rush to move absolutely everything to these massive centralized cloud services, is there still a place for simple, powerful, self-contained tools that put control right back into the hands of the user? What's the value of a tool that just works, right here on your own machine, no subscription or internet connection required? It's definitely something to think about.